So, first question. And, in every Q&A I've ever moderated in this country, I've had to say in starting, please ask questions only. Do not thank the speakers. Do not thank the organizers for setting up a wonderful event. Do not make a statement, just ask a question. But one day we'll get there. So the first question says, this is an awesome gathering. Thank you for inviting us all. And my question is this. But usually when they say my question is this, usually 3 or 4 questions follow. But this one is just one. What will you expect of us after this? Apart from the general principles that you have shared today, what will you expect of us after this? And I'd like the Honorable Minister to answer that. The second question says, what is the role of the youth in building the Nigeria of our dreams? And I'd like to invite His Excellency the Vice President to answer that question. The third says, what are the major factors that account for failure of apostles in the marketplace? And what can be done to help them stand in the midst of the perverseness that is all around us? I'd like to invite my brother Segun Olujobi to answer that question. So, Honorable Minister.
In the spirit of brevity, and given that our time is fast spent, I'm going to give short answers. I was taught a while back that when you have to give a brief answer to a very deep question like the one we got, what do you expect of us? You have to give answers that are either based on principle or that, almost like a bit of a formula or something somebody can practice. And so with that, let me just say 3 quick things based on at least my interaction with the leadership of apostles in the marketplace. First is, what do we expect of you? I can tell you what the burning desire of apostles in the marketplace is, which I want to challenge all of us to go and do. And I try to cover some of that in my speech. The vision would have been accomplished when all of us that are associated with apostles in the marketplace, one way or the other, become living, walking examples. In other words, where we literally epitomize this, the reality of living the faith. As you've had, said in several ways, in poetry, in message, in prophecy, in prayer. So the first thing is to yourself be true. And it's not a movement that is so much about a formal movement as much as it is about a burning desire to see each and every one of us go and practice this, sound set of principles that can be so transformative that our Lord and Savior Jesus Christ taught. Now, but it would be unfair to stop there, because if it was that easy, people should be doing it. That then leads to the second point, which is, what do we want to do as a group? And what we want to do as a group is, which is why AIMP was formed, is to become a network. And I think the leadership and the people will tell us the next set of events and steps that we're going to take. And they sort of alluded to it, but there are going to be announcements before we close. And those announcements will be very specific on the steps we are taking to, sharpen, deepen this network so that we are helping each other to practice this faith. Because as we know, 2 are better than 1, and a 3-fold cord is not easily broken. The final thing I would say is what I call the responsibility of leadership. I was taught many years ago when I was training. I started life as a doctor, then I trained as an accountant. In both professions, the principle is the same, and I'm sure it's true of law and everything. The best way to practice something is actually when you're teaching somebody else. The moment they send you for training, when I was in Arthur Anderson, they basically warn you and prepare you for that training. When you come back, you're going to train everybody else. And I tell you, nothing focuses the mind like that. You pay a serious attention. speaking, people wonder why in Redeemed Christian Church of God they take ordinary men who are struggling with their faith and make them, ordain them as deacons, pastors. I would submit, based on my own experience, is the same principle, to get them to practice by teaching others. And I can tell you personally that by accepting responsibility of leadership at whatever level in the church, it has actually helped my own faith. What am I saying in effect? Let us accept responsibility here. I think our father in the faith, Brother Michael Ankpa, said he called us Christian leaders. He wasn't trying to make us feel good with ourselves. He's trying to challenge us to say, if you will accept responsibility that people are coming after you and that you need to lead them, it becomes a lot easier to start the practice. What am I saying in effect? What we would like to see is where everyone that is associated with this network would go and lead others, mentor others, help others to practice it. Not because you are perfect, but because that burden, in quotes, will help you get better at it. And in getting better at it, you will help other people as well. But I think you will hear more about the specifics from the working committee when they make the announcements. Thank you.
I'd like to invite the chairman of the board, Segun Olujobi, to answer the second question. Major factors that account for failure of apostles in marketplace and what can be done to help them stand in the midst of perverseness.
Thank you very much. I think that question has been answered today, really, in a sense, because if you listen to what His Excellency said or what my brother OK said, it's really about living. The reason why we fail in the marketplace is because we don't trust God enough. That's the real reason. One of the most interesting scriptures to me is I find in Revelation 21 verse 8. It says, the first thing about people who are going to not make heaven, it says the fearful. Typically, the reason why people fail is either because they are greedy, because you want to be like the Joneses, or because you are fearful. What's going to happen to me if I don't make enough money and they sack me? What's going to happen to me if, I can't pay my children's school fees? And they're valid questions. But if you will trust God enough, you will be okay. Things may be rough. So the first thing it says, the fearful doesn't mean people that don't trust God. If you don't trust God enough to stand on what you believe, that's one. But getting practical, one of the reasons why people also fail is that they lose their networks. So, for example, I would say if you want to stop smoking, you can't hang around people who are smoking and hope to stop. Taking more serious if you are into higher stuff like hemp. Then you start, I want to stop hemp, and you now start sitting around area boys. You can't stop. So if you have a challenge with your faith and you think you are not going to stand, then find people who you can be accountable with or to. That I met once in my early my consulting career, I met a gentleman. He had so much money. He was scared of dying. But that wasn't the tragedy. The tragedy was that he couldn't tell his wife. If you can't tell your wife the truth and be honest with her, and if you're not married, if you can't tell somebody that you trust and believe will stand, then you're going to have a problem. So people fail because they don't trust God. People fail because they don't have accountability networks. People fail because they are not living the faith. And the way to solve that problem is obvious. Live the faith, find an accountability network, trust God, and all will be well. Now, I've said it glibly, and it's not easy, because the challenges that people go through that make them do certain things if they're not greedy. But God will always see you through if you trust Him. And one of the things that being a marketplace apostle does actually strengthens your faith. I hope I've helped a bit. Thank you.
I'm tempted to add to Segun's answer that one of the reasons why the AIP network is there is to provide one of the things that he spoke about, that network of partners that help you to be accountable, that help you to walk the talk, and just encourage you. Because, Scripture says that we may stumble, but we will not fall. It says if we fall, there is a lifting up. It says that even if we're cast down, there is a lifting up. So at every point, whether it's at the stumbling, at the falling, at the being cast down, there is somebody around you to help you get up again. And the righteous man falls many times, but he gets up one time more than the last fall. And that's what AIMP is all about. So I'd like to invite His Excellency, the Vice President, to respond to the last question: what is the role of the young in building the Nigeria of our dreams?
Thank you very much, everyone. And well, when I was speaking, I actually thought I was speaking to the young people, but it appears there's a bit of a generational problem. But frankly, I always would like to say that young people are really those to whom most of what we're saying is addressed. And for those who say, I mean, that young people are the leaders of tomorrow or the future, every one of us knows that that is wrong, because the future has already arrived at our doorsteps, and we're seeing it right here, we're seeing it right now. So every one of these things, I think, applies, to every one of us. I'd like to see, personally, what I'd like to see, though, is that I'd like to see more active engagement in the social media, or people who are sharing the right principles. For example, I think the right thing to do will be to speak about unity, unity where people are talking about hate and people are talking about all manner of divisive things. I think young people who believe in what we're saying ought to be sharing on unity and what we can do, being united and all of that. How about love? Loving our enemies and all of that. I think we can engage a lot more. I think we can talk a lot more about what we believe, especially using the social media, because there's so much interaction that goes on, and some of the content is usually quite depressing. I think that there's an opportunity here to do a lot more, engage more on some of these principles in social media, and then look at all the issues around integrity, around corruption, and all of that. I don't see that there is enough condemnation, or that there is even enough calling out of people on issues of integrity. It's easy enough to just refer in general terms to corruption. But dishonesty everywhere. Dishonesty everywhere. At work, if you just ask your driver to go and buy some petrol, 5,000 naira worth of petrol, he buys 2,000, keeps the difference. That's how, and there's just, the examples multiply. I think we should call out people who, in every sphere of life, who are acting dishonestly and all that. And I think, again, the last thing, of course, is that we ourselves must believe. We must believe in these things. And we must hold ourselves to account. We ourselves must say, I believe that the way to transform our nation is to transform myself, to change myself, change my own way of thinking, and do things differently. So for me, I think for young people and for all of us, really it starts from holding ourselves to account and saying that I'm also responsible for some of this stuff, and I will change and make a difference.
Thank you very much, Your Excellency. Whilst we were taking the questions, a few more came in, and many of them have to deal with this issue of the youth. But like I said, they will all be addressed on the website. But then somebody talked about what His Excellency said about his conversation with Mr. President about this speech, talking to Nigerians. And his question is, when will this speech happen? Would like to thank you all for your questions. We'll just move on in earnest. I'd like to invite to make closing remarks this evening the Director General of the Budget Office, Pastor Ben Akabweze.
Your Excellency, honorable ministers, spiritual leaders, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, when I was asked to make closing remarks, my initial instinct was, okay, we'll try and do a summary of all of the key messages. But I think the messages were so clear that I would probably be subtracting from the messages if I tried to summarize them. But, I then thought, what should I say by way of closing remarks? When you look at our theme for today, building the Nigeria of our dreams, it's not very often. I always like to begin with definitions when I talk. But every single word, practically every single word there, is key. Talks about building, talks about Nigeria, our dreams. And why Nigeria? I want each and every one of us, as we leave here today, to be in no doubt about the fact that Nigeria is a very important nation. Nigeria is a globally important nation for many reasons. The world is counting on Nigeria for many of the resources that it needs, not the least of which is food. There are a few countries that have the sort of arable land that we have. It's a nation very richly blessed with natural resources that the world needs. But also, as you have heard from some of the tomes of prophecy that Emeka Nwapa read, it is a nation that is important in God's agenda for the world. I personally am convinced that a God of purpose could not have invested so much resources in the land of Nigeria without a divine purpose. And if you're still wondering how truly important Nigeria is, it is not an accident that it is the most important nation, by whichever way you cut it, in Africa. It's the most populous by a wide margin. The second most populous is only half our population. But it's also Africa's largest economy. It's projected by 2050 to be the third most populous country in the world. And in another 13 years thereabouts, our GDP is projected to top $1 trillion. There's no other country in Africa so if you're Nigerian, you belong to, or if you're resident here, you live in a really important nation, and we need to begin to see it in that light. It talks about our dream. We're talking about something collective, not individual or sectional, about a shared vision, and we must then begin to really to a shared vision of the greatness of this nation. A dream. A dream is, a dream is loosely defined as an involuntary, vision. But a dream and vision are just once removed from each other. And you must have a vision for this nation. You must share the vision for this nation that is already so well articulated, even in our national anthem, in the pledge that we recited earlier on. And then it talks about building. So you must, as you leave here today, if you haven't yet figured out the answers to questions like who is to do the building, hopefully you already can situate yourself in this building process. What resources are needed for the building? How will the resources be mobilized? These are all, we all have a role in this. But believers have a particular role in this, and I'm sure that you have heard a lot about that from the our speakers for today. Today, you've come on the platform of the apostles in the marketplace, and oftentimes when people hear marketplace, they think in terms of where people are buying and selling. But there is a definition of a marketplace. The marketplace, broadly speaking, is defined as a realm of business, trade, economics, professions, government, and education. And so in AIMP, that's the definition of the marketplace that we have. And who is an apostle? An apostle is a pioneer in a reform movement. And this is essentially a reform movement. A pioneer is a sent one. In this case, apostles in the marketplace, people sent into the marketplace. And there is a purpose for that. The marketplace today is notorious for its perverse darkness, typified by the corruption, greed, pride, jealousy, lies, fraud, manipulation, immorality, idolatry, bloodshedding, and so on. You've been sent as an apostle there to make a difference. And my prayer is that each and every one of us today will sign up indeed to go as apostles in the marketplace. I close with this. In 2005, I attended a Christian conference in Cape Town, South Africa. And during the conference, different speakers came. Some people extolled the revival that was, going on in Nigeria. And then someone got up and described the revival in Nigeria as one that was a mile wide and an inch deep. You can imagine my embarrassment. There's so many, and it's supported, so many Christians, so many churches, the largest churches in Africa. So many professing Christians in positions of authority, and yet nothing seeming to work. That's what the apostles in the marketplace are being sent to make a difference, to change. And my prayer is that as we all commit to that change, God himself will enable us to be not just the change agents, but to be the change that we desire to see. Thank you, and God bless you.